painting a very negative picture right now, okay, consciously, so don't call me out on this. Now, where you need to look at your fund is what can they do to help you sell better or distribute your product better, and can they possibly help me or help you in building your product a little more cost effective or in a faster manner. Now, why I mention these two nuances is because if these two areas happen, even one of them happen, you've extended a lifeline of runway for the founder in one way or the other, which gives them two options now, either breathing room on how to grow with more conscious efforts, or accelerate their journey with less palpitation in the early days. So when a founder comes and evaluates all these three criterias, I can speak on behalf of my own team, we're all on our feet. We're like, this founder is evaluating us a lot. And I think the other is, and I'm going to repeat and pass it over, we love having conversations beyond work. So meeting them outside work is very important for us, because getting to know them, getting to know their motivations is very important, because we can't, as Ravneet mentioned, we can't always be involved in doing everything for these founders, right? You have to be hands-off also. And therefore, understanding them is critical, at least in our methodology.
I think that's a very critical point you raise. I'll give you an anecdotal example from my life too. So when I was in private equity world, based out of New York City, we used to do late-stage growth equity deals in emerging markets and write checks of 500 million plus. At that time, you'll get all the big companies coming, doing nice presentations with nice PPTs, but then we'll do a dinner on a rooftop bar in Midtown Manhattan. That's when they start telling, after a few drinks, what is wrong in their company and why they're looking for money. So ultimately, getting to know them outside of the work, getting to know them in a social setting, because in a presentation, everything is rehearsed. But actually being an organic environment where you actually build chemistry or actually find out what are the red flags.
So what happened to people that were teetotalers and weren't drinking?
No, they were the smart guys, right? And they were junior analysts and associates who were just sitting there taking notes.
I'll consider myself smart then.
All right. Now, so Anisha, tell me the same thing from a woman entrepreneur's perspective, that in a resource-constrained environment like India, where the depth of capital pool is not that big. Now, how do you choose an investor, and especially for a female founder, and especially since most of the investors, and maybe I might be wrong, but majority still are male-dominated investment industry?
You're not wrong on that, but I'll tell you, I think it depends on time, right? When you're saying it, I'm not even sure why we're saying when you choose your investor, like we're in 2021. Markets have changed, okay? So I have a saying, and this is coming from a founder that started raising in 2009, which is me. And मैंने बड़े पापड़ बेले हैं. I have met over hundreds of investors, and I used to think they were scum of earth. I used to say मैं कुछ भी बन जाऊंगी, VC नहीं बनूंगी, because they are the most घटिया people I know. Sorry, no offense, I am the घटिया people now. But the fact of the matter is, we're not in that. We're not in 2021 when it's a boom market. It is now an investor-led market, which doesn't mean a founder's choosing anymore. So my saying to everybody is, जब लक्ष्मी घर आती है ना नहीं करते. You choose carefully, yes. Do not be stupid about it. Do not give away, like I have founders that I'm so upset that I've heard, and I think it's, as an ecosystem, it's our responsibility as a whole to not do this. But you hear that some investors got terms like non-dilutive, which is the worst, which means they'll not dilute on the next round. As a founder, it's our responsibility to know what is harmful to the company. However, that being said and done, I have done this dance many times. I will tell you this, not as female founders, but as founders in general. When you're getting capital, trust me, you do not know your investor and your investor will not know you. It is like a marriage. It can go shitty anytime. Oh, sorry. Oh, I speak informally. I'm sorry I use that word. It can go bad anytime. Or it can go great anytime. There are no two ways about it. We will not know how it works out. You just have to make sure that it's you're getting a good vibe from them. They're not being sharks per se, and that they're not asking for terms that are really bad, that are encroaching or going to take away your freedom as a founder. As long as you can see that, and then both of these have said that, and in different shades. just having a more hands-off relationship. When the founder needs you, then you're on there. All that is important. And as long as you can get that vibe from your investor, I think take the money, especially now in this market. It's not a free-floating environment anymore. Take it and grow your company. Sometimes it's about survival. You survive to tell the story, and you got to do what you got to do. If you get a bad investor and you can survive and then get a better investor who will help you clean your cap table, do it. That's my advice to everybody.
All right. Said it very strongly, so I won't try to refute it. I'll leave it at that.
Sorry. Sorry.
I don't think anybody on the stage would want to refute what she just said. But Ravneet, let me get back to you, and then I'll come to you, because I want to hear the rebuttal on that when we close. You're in the venture debt business at the end of the day, Stride. Now, we saw what happened with Silicon Valley Bank, and that was the biggest venture debt platform, and it was underpinning the success story of Silicon Valley since 1984, or when it was created. Now, how do you see venture debt market in India and venture debt as a good investment platform or vehicle for startups, especially when we're talking about, do you want to go with a bad investor and hope to find a good one later? Why not do venture debt where you know what your liabilities are upfront and your terms are clear?
I think that's a very, very relevant question. And I just get back to, back in the day, a lot of conversations, similar panels, VCs were asked, what do you look for in an investor, in a founder? The tables have turned to some extent. Founders are being asked, what do you look for in an investor? And I think that's a healthy balance right there. But when you come down to venture debt, and it's a market that's nascent, to say the least, in the country right now. But it is a market that's growing, and it's an asset class that's very important. Someone here, I think it was Vikram who mentioned about, founder dilution, and, even Anisha was talking about it. I think it's identifying which asset class is important at what point in time. They all have their role to play. It's a healthy balance. It's asset allocation, literally, that you're doing on your cap table as well. And you're identifying what comes in where, at what level, and at what price point. And, and it's of course a personal choice. A lot of founders do view it differently, where they want to get into it only when they've achieved a certain size and scale. But I think from our perspective, the only thing that I really feel that it really provides an edge over, I guess, the patient capital that you have from an equity perspective is the agility that you need sometimes. And that's what we bring to the table, to equip you to be quick to respond when you do need that leverage. So there aren't any lost opportunities. Like Anisha was saying, sometimes it's just about survival. I think sometimes it's about an opportunity cost that you don't want to miss, right? And how can you capitalize and leverage that by having the right partner and not looking at down rounds? And that's where you really bring in someone like a Stride to make sure that that's happening. And venture debt in the US is already 20% plus, 22% of, the VCP ecosystem. In India, it's less than 5%. So we all know the direction in which it's headed. But how soon, how effectively, how quickly will it happen? A lot of it also depends on, how receptive and how good we are at our job in educating the founders. And I think we've got, a long road ahead of us. It is a tall order, but we're doing it one step at a time, and I'm seeing a good response. So I think we're here to stay for the long run.
All right, sounds good. Now, Vikram, let me get back to you, because I think you wanted to jump in on that one. So,
No, I think what Anisha was talking about was actually quite interesting, because there is that feeling of, an investor versus a founder, right? So that's because, some of the terms that you put in the term sheet, the founders obviously are not comfortable with. I think, and that happens, obviously, the objectives are slightly different, even though the bigger picture, the objectives are completely aligned in terms of value creation. The focus is making sure that the company grows and, creates profits over a period of time and value is created, right? That's the alignment of interest. But I think where there is, kind of a slightly different view is an investor comes with an exit in mind, right? So investor thinks of, So when I go and invest in a founder, it's somebody else's money. I'm actually managing third-party capital. When I raise capital from them, I told them that I'm going to return your money in a certain time frame. So therefore, I have to make sure that my money comes back. So whenever I'm negotiating my terms with the founder, I have to make sure that my exit is not compromised. And if I'm looking for a 5-year exit at a Series A, I'm typically looking for an M&A exit. If I'm investing in Series B or Series C, probably I'm thinking of an IPO. So if I'm looking for an M&A exit, that means I'm going to sell the entire company to somebody else. If I'm going to sell the entire company to somebody else, the founder has to be aligned with that, right? So because it's his company or her company. So that's when a little bit of kind of discussion happen in terms of the specific terms, and specifically on the exit side, where things like drag along. It's a clause which actually sounds very draconian, that even though I'll be holding 15% of the company, I can sell 100% of the company to somebody who wants to buy the company. Now that is actually, sounds like, could be a completely misalignment at the time of exit. But these terms are discussed at the time of investment itself, so that if the founder is aligned, that fine, I'm also thinking of 5 to 6 year time frame for an M&A exit. If I don't want to do an M&A, then I will make sure that I'll find you an exit, and there'll be another partner I will find, so who will buy your equity, which will be a secondary exit. So I think these are certain things where the terms can start becoming, interesting, from a negotiation perspective from both the sides.
All right, sounds good. So I want to do this as a closing part only, but before we get to that, the last question is going to be a little bit different, where I'm going to put myself on the spot here as government officer. Tell me, so let's say Ministry of Electronics and IT funds a lot of startups every year, right? Hundreds of CRs of funding goes to startup every year. Startup India Seed Fund puts in a lot of money. DST puts in a lot of money. IDEX does it. A lot of states are doing it. Gujarat state is doing it. Today morning we saw GAVFL putting in so much money. Now that money is going to the ecosystem. Now is that distorting the private sector funding ecosystem? Is it enabling it, facilitating it? Or what can we do better to engage private sector? Because in an ideal scenario, I would want that startups that I'm investing in, that they come to you guys immediately, guys and girls, that okay, you can leverage that funding that the government is already putting in, because I am limited to that 50 lakh or 1 CR check. After that, there is no dry powder, no follow-on investment. I'm not going to handhold them till exit. My job is to enable the ecosystem by providing the seed capital or commercialization money. Now, how do we create stronger linkages between the investment community and the government grant funding agencies, so that we can all create leverage effect on the capital that's going into the ecosystem?
Yeah, so we've raised a lot of government capital from different pockets. DST is one of our investors through Technology Development Board as well. And I think, what I've realized is that the objective behind the nature of capital, I think, is very different. When capital is coming from any of the government pockets, I think the objective of that capital is to promote the startup ecosystem, to make sure that, at the time when nobody else is willing to take the risk, you basically help these startups to at least take off the ground, and especially in the areas which are otherwise may not be well funded, otherwise other people are not looking at those areas. And I think from that perspective, it's commendable what the government has done, creating all these different pockets of capital across different areas, and I think this is something amazing. But I think there are opportunities still, in my view, where, how these pockets actually, when they put in capital, the terms for these startups. I think sometimes those terms are not definitely, those terms are not necessarily aligned with the objective of the capital. So I think, for example, is there a possibility to actually do something like, bring more capital, private capital along with it, where, the government capital takes the first loss, as an example, right? So, or define a return, which basically if I get, let's say, a 5% return or a 7% return, the founder can buy back the stake at a defined percentage return. So I think there are multiple ways. Israel government actually is a good example of what they did in early 90s with their startup ecosystem. This is exactly what they did, to promote the startup ecosystem. Even to invest in funds, they actually invested in funds by taking the first loss guarantee model. I think that's an opportunity for us when we are creating the pockets of capital in the government institutions.
Before we move on, so actually Mighty, we recently last year launched a scheme called Samrid, and that is actually modeled after that only, whereby it's a co-investment scheme. Historically, the government only gave grant funding. Here we are actually an investor. So we will invest alongside the private sector on the same terms as the lead investor, and of course some representation, warranty, indemnification for the government of India that we keep on the side letter. But the idea is that we'll put in that 50 lakh once a year, and the startup has to get the matching funding from outside investor. And the beauty is that we launched that scheme, and now 175 startups are going through the cohort through 22 accelerators, and each of them on average has received 4x money that what we had committed. And in that we have kept the terms that we are not going to take more than 5%, we will not have drag along, tag along, no anti-dilution, no preferentials, nothing. We'll be at the bottom of the totem pole, and we are okay to deal with the consequences as long as you're able to bring in more money up front. Then whatever happens to our money is, or the taxpayers' money, is that if I get my return back and can become self-sustainable funding mechanism, so more startups can be funded later, is the only thing we are looking at. We are not looking to build a big fund out of this program, but that's something that we have started.
This is a great example of what I...
But so, from your perspective, where can government and, let's say, investor ecosystem can work together?
I'll only cover one point. I think a lot of them have been covered, and I love the example you just gave. I think the support of getting this capital at a faster turnaround time. Now I can't define what, I know there are a lot of processes that go in. There's obviously an ample amount of applications, so there's complexities. Very easy for me to sit in a chair and say this. But the dissemination and the procedure of giving that capital to the founders first, if it can be quicker or tranched out in a more, and I'm going to use the word impatient manner rather than so patiently done, can go a long way for the early stage startup. A lot of what we know about early stage startups is that they have typically smaller runways, or they're in the midst of a friends and family round. If they can't do that, they're going to raise a pre-seed or whatever they want to call it. So this capital goes a very long way for two reasons. One is it's access to capital, therefore it should be faster, could be faster, even better. The second is that vote of confidence does create a sense of, I wouldn't say it becomes a criteria for many funds like us, it doesn't. But maybe for a company that's trying to raise from friends and family, for whom it's a big risk, that accreditation becomes a big validation for them. I think the rest has been mentioned, and I'm going to echo and steal a point that you had mentioned yesterday, Nisha. I think the point is the dissemination of this information. I think I've stolen what you...
I'm going to say it again. Don't worry. It's okay. You
So I'm just going to pause here. I'm going to pause.
Good thing you told her before, otherwise you would have got a reaction. So.
Literally her point that I was stealing shamelessly.
All right, yeah, you can say it in a much more impactful way.
As Sanil so elegantly put it, I think, the thing is, I think the government is doing a fabulous job. All right, and I know this because I've been in this ecosystem forever. I think the support is brilliant, everything is brilliant. If we can just do more around just, letting people know about it, that would go a long way. Because I think it's being done in pockets. It just needs to be more cohesive. People need to know about it. I think for the longest time, people believed that grants, if you had a grant, investors looked at you negatively. That you were not fundable. That is changing as well. We just did a deep tech company that is in the brain mapping space that has been living off of government grants, but is just a phenomenal company. It's in the top health tech AI companies in the world right now. But it has come because the government has been able to support it, and they've been able to do this. One thing I will say that I've heard founders who've taken grants or done anything echo it is, if the paperwork could be easier. It is like getting a black belt. If you've understood it, then that mastery is brilliant. Then you're the master of grants. But if you haven't understood it, and especially because you're a small startup, then that paperwork just seems very tedious. So if there's maybe something that just walks people through the finer things with the government, that's pretty much it. I think that otherwise everything is fine. Everybody's doing a great job. Why are we even questioning it?
All right, we won't question it since you mentioned it. Should we even ask you since everything is fine?
I think it's a fab job that the government has done. Mighty, DST, Startup India. It's the whole ecosystem, and it is a collective push. I don't think it's a push in pockets. It is disseminating in terms of trying to create impact. Of course, you've got to start somewhere. And through that perspective, I think the impact has been felt. In terms of dissemination of information, yeah, it could be a little more digitized. I don't think that there is that much asymmetry in terms of that, but more in terms of ease of understanding, or understanding the eligibility criteria, or how quickly can you be a receptor for those funds. It's just getting those nuances right. And I know there are nodal bodies. Startup India, I don't know how many 1,000 startups they've registered, and they have a whole team out there, starting from I think 5 people a few years ago to I think you guys are 60, 70 plus now, 100, 55. So I think the fact that the government is investing in an entity to facilitate just that, and I don't know any startup here that's probably not heard of Startup India. Now, can Startup India create a national single window for schemes across all states? Yes, we can. Can you put down filters out there? Basis your startup, background, how many years old are you, what's your runway like, listing down the metrics over there, make it a little more, friendly UI. Of course, that can be done. But are we in the right, are we in the right direction? Have we taken the right steps? I think the foundation is very strong. The very fact that, we have so many thousand registered startups, infant mortality is expected to reduce over a period of time, and I think we're on the right trajectory.
No, sounds good, and I think I won't speak for Startup India, the team is here, but they are doing a wonderful job, and I think it is in their mandate, and they are working on that digitization of all the schemes, the mentor portal, everything else that's happening. But I'll tell you at Mighty what we have done, at least for our COEs and incubators and accelerators, 140 odd plus, we have funded so many CapEx, so many equipment, labs, etc. Now we have created a portal at the Mighty Startup Hub where all the incubators, accelerators, COEs are uploading their equipment, labs, co-working space, conference room, so startups can have visibility of it. So when a startup is going from Pune to Bangalore and needs to meet a customer or investor for 4 hours, they can book that conference room in one of the incubators and pay whatever $400-500 they have to. But at least they have access to that world-class infra that the government has created. And they are able to do that. So we have digitized that at least for our Mighty portfolio.
And also I forgot to mention, I know something that I really love that they're doing is these master classes, providing you access to that mentorship. You don't know what clicks, right, in which conversation. I mean, just having access to that platform is itself immeasurable, beyond, of course, an equity grant or a cash dole-out.
Absolutely. And Anisha, we are 1 minute over. I told you I'll free you up at 3 o'clock. So please bear with me. Now we are done. So thank you so much to the panel. I think this was a great discussion. And thank you all for being part of the session. Really enjoyed it, and if anything that we can do for you through the government or the investors, we are happy to connect and help in whatever way we can. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. May I invite Shri Banchanidhi Pani sir, Commissioner of Technical Education, Government of Gujarat, to felicitate all our panelists. We have on the stage Shri Jeet Vijay, CEO Mighty Startup Hub, Ms. Ravneet Mann, Head of Strategy and Policy, Stride Ventures, Ms. Anisha Singh, Founder, She Capital, Mr. Sanil Sachar, Partner, Huddle Venture Fund, and Mr. Vikram Gupta, Founder and Managing Partner, Ivy Cap Ventures Advisors Private Limited. Our deepest gratitude to all of you for sharing your inspiring stories and also giving us an insight into the startup scenario. Sir, please, may I request all the panelists for a group photo? Sir, a group photo please with the panelists. Thank you very much. We will begin with the next session shortly. This event is meticulously planned to unite startups, investors, angel networks to facilitate a dynamic interchange of prospects and perspectives. Our next session is on global opportunity for startups. In today's interconnected world, startups no longer operate in isolated markets. The vast digital landscape and evolving technological frameworks have paved the way for startups to think globally from day one. Recognizing the multitude of opportunities beyond borders, many startups are leveraging international platforms, tapping into global networks, and harnessing the power of cutting-edge technologies like artificial intelligence to enhance their offerings and scale rapidly. This session underscores the paramount importance of global accelerators, industry frontrunners, and the transformative role of artificial intelligence in the startup arena. With the overarching goal of driving startup expansion and cultivating international partnerships, the session is designed to provide a comprehensive outlook on global opportunities. Esteemed speakers, renowned for their expertise in the global startup ecosystem, will be gracing the session, sharing their invaluable insights, experiences, and capabilities, thereby equipping participants with the tools and knowledge to navigate the global startup successfully. In a globalized world, the quality of education, skills, research, and innovation ensure competitive advantage and create new opportunities. This occasion will be instrumental for startups, providing them with invaluable information, market access, risk capital, and mentorship. We will be beginning with our session shortly. Deepak Sharma, Managing Partner and Co-founder, India Accelerator, will be the moderator for this session. Sir, may I hand over the session to you now?
Good afternoon, everyone. So it's a great privilege to moderate the session on global opportunity for startups. And it's indeed a privilege to represent India Accelerator at Vibrant Gujarat Startup Conclave. It's really a great setup, the participants that we have, as part of the panel discussion here. When we look at Gujarat, Gujarat has been a consistent top performer, in the Startup India rankings in promoting and nurturing the startup ecosystem in the country. We look at some of the path-breaking policies that the Gujarat government has started in terms of SSIP, having iHub, promoting startups, grants that have come out. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank Education Department, Government of Gujarat for organizing such a brilliant startup conclave. So on behalf of Government of Gujarat, I would like to extend a warm welcome here to all the panelists that we have as part of the panel discussion today. What we see has, all of them have traveled from the different parts of the globe. We have Deepak Ahuja, who represents a Gulf Business Incubator and have come from UAE. We have Nicoli, who heads MLab and has come from South Africa. We have Pat, who has come all the way from US. He represents Global Accelerator Network, which was formerly and now it is Moro. We have Takeru, who is here coming from Japan. He heads 01 Booster. We have Jan here, who heads a large consulting organization. And we have Achiberi Felix here, who is from Nigeria and represents DTH Africa Group. So a warm welcome and a thanks to all of you for coming all the way to represent and be part of the Startup Conclave. On behalf of the Government of Gujarat, I would like to extend a warm welcome and a thanks to all of you. So without much ado, I would like to do a quick round of introduction for all the panelists here so that, we all in the audience can understand and learn, what all entities do you do and how do you expand and help the startups. So starting from Deepak here, if you could briefly talk about yourself, introduction, and what do you do as part of Gulf Business Incubator?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm actually very excited and thrilled to be part of this Startup Conclave, and thanks to Vibrant Gujarat. As Deepak Sharma said, I'm based in Dubai for the last 28 years. I was a banker for almost 21 years, but kept on investing in startups. I'm an investor, mentor, advisor. But today, the role that I'm playing here is I'm representing the Dubai government, because for the last 1 year, we are running an accelerator for them, where we are committed to bring amazing tech companies from different parts of the world into Dubai. So we've been able to bring companies from US, from Australia, from different Middle Eastern countries, and a lot from India. As we know, India has become a global hub for startups now. So that's my mandate. If there are good startup ideas in this room who want to go for global expansion and they want to use Dubai as a launch pad, I'm ready for the conversation. Thank you.
Thanks, Deepak. Nicoli?
Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks very much for having me. I'm the CEO of MLab. MLab was actually set up with funding from the World Bank over 10 years ago. We're a non-profit company, tech-focused, and our big driver is on supporting digital skills and early-stage startups. Our focus is on supporting beneficiaries from disadvantaged communities, so a big focus on supporting youth and women entrepreneurs. We're really trying to drive building a thriving innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystem in South Africa.
Pat?
Hello, everyone. My name is Patrick Riley. I'm the CEO of Morrow, and some of you in the room may know us by our former name, GAN. So there's many of you in the room that know about accelerators and venture studios and venture hubs. And really before 2005, those entities didn't exist. They're pretty new. And as a result of their growth, Morrow was set up to go and support them. So we call ourselves a venture development ecosystem that effectively helps the world's venture accelerators, studios, and hubs operate and scale and grow their work with startups, of which we are so proud to have India Accelerator be a member in it today. So with that, I hand over to you.
Thanks, Pat. Takeru?
So, hi, good afternoon, everyone. So, thank you so much for inviting me to this session. So, I'm Takeru Kawashima, Executive Director of Zeron Booster. Zeron Booster is a Japanese accelerator which has operated since 2012. And so far, we have organized like our 70 acceleration programs with variety of industrial partners, government agencies, and sometimes we also work with our Italian embassies or Canadian embassies, like other countries' government agencies. And we supported 700 startups so far, and eventually we started a new initiative like our venture studio, and now we also formed our own venture capital funds. It's pretty small funds, but it's also open for global startups. So I think one of our unique approach is we always work with partners for supporting the startups, because our steps are not that strong. We have a bunch of our serial entrepreneurs as mentors, but every startup needs industrial expertise, and we cannot fill in the gap in any verticals. So for the food tech space, we work with our food companies, and the gaming space, we work with gaming companies. That's how we fill in the gap. So yeah, I think I spoke too much, so thank you.
Thanks, Takeru. Jane, please.
Whoa, what a panel. Great, thank you very much for that one. And great to be here. My name is Jan, I'm coming from EDG, Enterprise Development Group, and we call ourselves Nomads for Innovation. So what does that mean? We're looking for innovations and bringing them to big corporates, NGOs, and municipalities. And you're already searching for startups. We like to take them as well on a journey to a regenerative world, because we're facing climate change, and I know climate change is not everything, but without climate, everything is nothing. So we are looking for your solutions.
Thanks, Jane. Felix?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Felix. I'm the founder of DTH Africa. DTH is a technology accelerator, startup incubator, and venture capital companies set up to take advantage of multiple opportunities within Nigeria and the West African sub-region.
Thanks, Felix. So we'll start open the discussion, for everyone. And the first question that really comes in the mind of a startup essentially is that, why should I go global? So Jen, a question to you from your consulting experience. Why should really a startup think about global expansion?
Well, you're hitting the point. That's why I'm here. So I'm from Palo Alto, Silicon Valley. So where am I? I'm in India. Why? Because here is where innovation is happening. So I'm coming here. I would love to see your solutions in India, from India coming to the world. Because if you can do it in India, you can do it everywhere. You can work at scale. You know what growth is. You know what has to be done. And you're facing the reality every day. So there's a huge opportunity for Indian startups across the world. And especially, and I might fish on that one for a second, all the startups which are working on DPI infrastructure, so digital public infrastructure. You're leapfrogging the world. You are leapfrogging the world. There's nothing like UPI across the world. There's nothing like Aadhaar across the world. So you've got a beautiful treasure box And please bring that across. I'm sure you're going to make it there.
Thanks, Jen. And very interesting to learn that there is a lot of interest in UPI, what has happened as part of digital public infrastructure. And there is a lot of opportunity for startups which are there in the fintech specific space to take those solutions which have really been solved at a scale in India with 1.4 billion population and really then replicated across the world. Really interesting. So Deepak, would you want to add something to this question?
I think in this interconnected world that we live today, I think globalization has been the key defining characteristics, and it's changed the way businesses operate. It's also opened up a lot of opportunity for the startups to thrive globally. So going global is not an option. I think it's a necessity because eventually that's how you create scale. Of course, it comes with its own challenges, which we'll discuss. But I think in the terms of expansion, Indian startup today is not just wanting to go, but there are geographies which are encouraging them to come because India has become a global hub for startups. Many solutions that we have developed have been accepted in different parts of the world. So many examples, right, from Oyo Room to Zomato, Freshworks. These are startups which started in India, but now today they are global names. So, and again, pure commercial reasons, as a startup founder and your investors, you want to give them the best returns. So yes, we have a huge population of 1.4 billion, but then the world is your playground today. You're not limited to 1.4 billion. You actually have 9 billion and increasing every day. So that's why it's important for the Indian startups to look at the globalization. Absolutely.
So great point made by Deepak. You also talked about a few of our Indian startups which have gone global, Oyo Rooms, Freshworks, Ola, to name a few. And a great point in terms of the startup when it is really looking at scaling in terms of moving to different geographies, penetrating it, overall improving the scale and the expansion, looking for new avenues of revenue, opening up new categories. That's really when a startup should, eventually think about expansion. Wonderful. So, Takeru, a question to you. When a startup has really made up the mind of expanding across geography from where it is present, what do you see are some of the challenges which really a startup faces when it is thinking about global expansion?
So I think I'm gonna talk from like a Japanese startup perspective, as an example. So in Japan, our globalization is like a big topic and also quite challenging topics for most of the startups. So historically, our startups in Japan, they have to focus on domestic market at first. They're gonna get the market share, 10%, 20%, 30%. Then they can move forward to global markets with our affluent resources. So that happens usually in Series A, B, that kind of stage. But at the time, there are so many competitors in global markets, in China or United States or India. There are always competitors. Also, our market structure is totally different. So if the startups keep working on the domestic markets, the product itself and the operation itself, a lot of process gonna be adjusted and specialized in local markets. So they have to switch the minds and trying to adjust to the global markets, like Indian markets, for example. That means it's almost same to build new products, it's almost same to start a new service in the new markets. That's costs a lot and that's quite challenging. So I think that's a difficulty for startups. So different of our cultural things and also business operation. And if you keep working on the same country, your mind and your products and your team are gonna be adjusted in just one market. So how are you gonna solve this problem? I think that's points we're gonna discuss maybe later. So that's a challenge anyway.
So great point made by Takeru. So what he's talking about essentially is that a startup, before looking at global expansion, needs to be a category leader, needs to really penetrate into the geography where they are present. And once they do that, then they think about expanding across geographies. And some of the challenges which they could face is more in terms of the laws and the regulations of that specific place, really looking at market expansion and growth. That is another challenge, and then building the team, around that. Pat, would you want to add something further based on your experience with helping global accelerators and helping startups, with global expansion?
Yeah. So what I loved about your question was you going, what are the biggest issues that startups have once they're on the ground in a new place? And Startup Genome has a ton of data on what we see startups doing that ultimately scale the fastest. So I use their data a lot, and one of the things they say is for the startups that we've seen scale and revenue the fastest, they have two interesting characteristics. The first one being they have more connections than the startup that the ones that have more revenue have more connections. But there's this other piece too where it's actually the depth of connection is actually even more important than the number of connections. So the startups that effectively go to new places and have depth and number of connections take off dramatically. And I think that's the biggest thing I see with startups that go abroad is typically it's the mentality of I'm here and therefore everybody will come my way. I will have business. And that's not the case. Right? At the end of the day, what we're seeing from the reports is that A, it requires lots of connections, which means you have to be hustling, you got to be selling. But also too, I think one of the reasons you go internationally is because it builds that depth of connection and but of course one of the challenges because it takes a while for you to get to know people once you're on the ground, but of course that's the job of a startup to go and do that.
Great point, Pat. So moving on, Felix, a question to you. Now that we know that there are challenges which are there, which every startup experiences, when they are in that global expansion phase, what do you think is the role of global accelerators and how can they help the startups in terms of circumventing those challenges?
I think global accelerators have got a lot of role to play. I'll give you an example. In terms of governance infrastructure, if you look at most startups today, in the last couple of years, few startups that you can mention raise funds. The next 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, you hear they've gone down. Most of these young folks, believe, that once you've got an idea, once you can be called a founder or a co-founder, that is just enough for you to start up a business. But there's a place of experience, there is a place of knowledge, there's a place of perseverance and understanding and discipline. And unfortunately, most of these young folks lack the discipline, they lack the endurance. So some raises capital, the first thing that comes to their mind is to live large. I've had cases where some young startup founders pay themselves as much as $50,000 a month, and consequently comes the death of that company. So accelerators has a role to play in helping to deepen the strength of these companies and making sure that their growth is not just growth in the floor, but growth that is sustainable. And also helping to guide them to identify the right partnership, the right collaboration that can help them to expand the global market opportunity and make the best use of what they are set up to do.
Wonderful. So great point by Felix that, when a startup is really looking for global expansion, when they reach out to an accelerator, they could really look at, in terms of helping them set up their shop in that specific region, helping them navigate, through all the rules and the regulations of that place, and then really helping them with either fundraise or market expansion and growth.
I would like to add a point here. I think when you look at the global accelerators, they have a very critical role to play because in terms of the global expansion, there are multiple complexities today. So Felix covered about the legal and regulatory framework, but there are cultural issues, there are language barriers, and the right partners to be identified. I mean, the expansion to different markets can come up with a lot of constraints, and this is where the global accelerators play a very, very important role. I have to emphasize one very important point that when you go to a market, you end up doing collaborations with a lot of partners. Now, you need to be sure that the value system match has been achieved, because you can't change partners in many countries once you enter that. So these are some of the additional support systems that the global accelerators can provide. And the reason I'm talking about localization and the cultural issue, because even when big multinationals like McDonald's and KFC came to India, they had to customize the menu for India. It won't work what works in different. So if they had to do it, and these are billions of dollars companies, the startup has to look at that aspect as well.
Great point, Deepak. Nikoli, would you want to add something to these, challenges aspect, and how global accelerators really help startups in the global expansion?
Yeah. In Africa, we have a saying, a proverb that says it takes a village to raise a child. And I think if we use the same concept, I think it really takes a global network of accelerators, different ecosystem players to actually help raise a successful startup, because we really are talking about global startups. And I think what's really important is, like you were talking about those relationships, it's about creating the relationships as well between different incubators and accelerators, because, we'd love to act as a soft landing pad for those businesses that are coming into South Africa. We have the partnerships, we have the established networks, we understand the challenges, the cultural norms, etc. And so it's about being able to be that partner across the border to really create that conducive environment for innovation. And it's a lot about mutual benefit. How can we all benefit from the cross-border collaboration? And I think, also if you think of South Africa, we like to see ourselves as also an entry point into Southern Africa. We belong to networks such as the Southern African Innovation Collective. We run continuous initiatives between hubs in the different countries. And so by you coming to South Africa, you're actually also getting a step into some of the SADC countries like Namibia, Botswana, Zambia, Tanzania. And so you're actually able to tap into the networks and the footprint of a global accelerator.
So a very interesting point which Nikoli made was global accelerators really help in the soft landing of the startup, in that specific geography. And we all are aware of the soft landing which the Chandrayaan, did on the southern pole of the moon. And, that's where some of these global accelerators that you see here help in the soft landing. And by virtue of their partnerships and connections, that they have with the government, with the innovation, with the industry-specific clusters, it really helps the startups, get all that advice in one go from the accelerators, and then really, help in the expansion. Great point, Nikoli. So now when we look at it, from a technology perspective, we see digital transformation, we see, really cloud platforms. You could spin up servers and, build really great products, tech products, and, really help some of the problems which the customers are going through. So Takeru, a question for you from a digital transformation perspective. What do you think is the role of digital transformation and technology and the aid which it brings in terms of pushing the global expansion of startups?
So I think digital transformation, this keyword itself is our global topic. So in any countries, there are so many people talking about this topic, and Japan is of course the part of this community. But some other important thing is there is a huge gap between each country regarding the adoption ratio of digital transformation, especially enterprises like those like huge organizations. They have so many business processes. They have so many people working on this digital transformation issue. But some let me take a simple example, which is Japan or United States. In Japan, there is some data coming from a report which says Japanese enterprise, on average, use 10 softwares, 10 stars in each department. And on the other hand, US enterprises use 100 software, something like that. That's it depends on how we translate, how we see this data. But I feel like that means like our Japan has a huge potential for digital transformation business in enterprises. So maybe eventually the company or market is gonna be in the similar way. So Japan could follow the US, I think, way, like 5 to 10 years. So Japanese enterprise could use more softwares eventually, and other and so on. And each market has this kind of, I think, characteristics. So to identify this gap and find opportunities. So from a digital transformation perspective, I think that is a comment I want to ask here. Thank you.
Great. And Jen, considering your experience in consulting and really, you are passionate about technology and the way it solves the problem, would you want to add to this in terms of how digital transformation really aids in global expansion?
So I love that quote, and yes, everybody's talking about digital transformation, and it's the buzzword. Most of the companies at the moment still think in pipelines. They try to solve everything on their own, and suddenly they realize, oh shit, I'm surprised. We should think in bigger networks, and then they start to develop platforms and to make a fence around it, and suddenly they realize, oh, I can't solve that. So how should I? Should I give my entrance point away? How do I do that? Well, the only way to do it is digitally. So suddenly we have to start to think in ecosystems. And these ecosystems can be only driven digitally. So coming back to your question, do we need technology? Yes, we need technology to solve the big problems we have in the world. One way is to build digital network of networks. The problem is that most of the companies at the moment across the world, in Europe, in the States, maybe here in India as well, they think I have to solve everything on my own, and this is not going to work. I know that, for example, in a car, I worked for 30 years now in the OEM industry as well. In a car, you've got around 120 computers sitting in a car. They all have to be somehow connected. Everybody wants to sit on their own knowledge. This is not going to work. This is not going to work. So we have to think differently. So if we think about digital transformation, yes, we have to think about tech. That's one thing. The second thing, which is even more important, to have the trust to open your network to grow together. This is then tech really helping solving problems. So that's my take on that one.
Thanks. I think when we looked at some of the challenges and the opportunity from global expansion, one of the primary motivations from a startup perspective is really looking at a new market and really acquiring the market and expansion in that specific region. So I would like to pick your thoughts, Deepak. When an Indian startup is really thinking of going into the UAE or MENA specific region, what are some of those startups which would really look at expanding in that region? And as part of Gulf Business Incubator, what do you really do in terms of helping the startups with that expansion in that region?
Great. So two parts to the question. One is what kind of startups. Now, the mandate that we have from the government of Dubai is to bring technology businesses. Now, within technology, we have 9 verticals. So fintech, health tech, cyber tech, agri-tech, so on and so forth. But it doesn't limit there. If we find a great idea, we are happy to support it. I think because tech startups are easy to scale, that's one of the reasons we want to stick to that. In terms of what we do at IXL Gulf Business Incubator, I'll take the line that was mentioned, that the soft lending. So basically, in Dubai, you can do business in multiple ways, but you need to get the right licensing. Because if you take a licensing which is not appropriate for your business, you may end up in a very different place. So we start from there. We have got a mainline license that we issue for the startups, which is the most respected and reputable form of licensing. It allows you to work with the government departments, with the banks, with all the regulators, and that's the starting point. We also have created support system where we have marketing agencies, legal companies, financial accounting firms, because the startup coming from different part of the world will require the business support. So these are the hygiene factors. But then real magic happens when we open up our Angel Network. Now, by the name of it, Angel Network is supposed to be only investors, but what we have created in Dubai is a network of mentors, advisors, and investors. Now, let's say, for example, a edtech company that comes from US has a which is working in that geography. For UAE, they need to localize and customize the product, which is where our mentors come in, help in a big way. And the network that we have created has people from different backgrounds. So we have bankers, we have healthcare professionals, we have academic experts. So we are able to map the right mentor with each startup. And this is one of the very unique thing that a Gulf Business Incubator does, because it's called heavy lifting. And as you know, heavy lifting doesn't happen for many of the people. But that's not where we end. The most important aspect is the market access, because once the startup has established itself in the region, they can only make money if there's a proper market access, and which is where the real magic happens, because apart from those mentors, advisors who provide market access in their own domain, we have the backing of Dubai government. So we are able to take all our startups to the government of Dubai, and they open doors. So again, the same example of EdTech company. We have got 2 US EdTech. We've been able to work with the regulator for the education called KHDA and open doors through them. When it comes to healthcare, we work with the DHA, the health authority. We are able to open health tech doors for them. So this is probably the most unique thing that we do in IXL. And it's not limited to that. We are also trying to help the local startup ecosystem. So we will probably bring a lot of startups from that region into India as well. So it's not just taking startups from this part of the world, but many unique startups from that part of the world also will be getting exposure. So this is how we are differentiating ourselves in many ways, Deepak.
So great point. What Deepak essentially talked about was, we have licensing mechanisms, and through their network, it helps us really set up the shop in Dubai. Then there is a great mentor platform which is there, which will be opened up for all the startups, and then you can gain market access through that specific network of mentors, and they will also be able to fund your specific startups, and then through different partnerships which they have with the government and with different industry bodies can really help in expansion. Picking up, Pat, from a global accelerator perspective and as part of Moro, when an Indian startup is really looking at moving to the US for market expansion and growth, how does Moro really help the startup with that specific expansion and the market access in US? If you could share your thoughts.
Yeah, so I spend the majority of my time helping the Accelerator Studio and Hub. So I'll start with that and saying, as a startup looks to come to the States, I always point them towards those groups, right? Towards certain Accelerator Studios and Hubs, because to your point, they provide incredible resources, right? From intense mentoring to corporate connections to investor connections. So I think, if it goes back to my point earlier about the Startup Genome Report, right, it's about number of connections and it's about depth of those connections. So in light of that, what I love about accelerators and studios in particular, and of course hubs, but accelerators and studios, they spend so much time understanding what the startup needs and then therefore connecting them directly with the type of connection that they need. But I think to a second point, where I get excited about Moro is, for the startups that are coming out of Accelerator Studios and Hubs, I love helping them, A, get access to capital, because of course that's what everybody needs. B, spending a lot of our time and energy connecting them with corporates. But I think an increasing need, especially for those of you in the room that are working with startups, is ensuring that the founders get access to mental health support. If we look at least in the States, I don't know what it is in India, but in the States, 45% of founders either have moderate to severe depression, moderate to severe anxiety, or bipolar disorder. And that's 45%. And I think if we aren't coming alongside founders and providing that support, a little bit shame on us. So we spend a lot of our time and energy connecting them with counselors and other therapists who can actually help them as they go and scale their company, because it's really hard work.
Great. So Felix, I would move towards you and ask you a question in terms of, when we look at global expansion, we obviously, speak with different entities, whether they are global accelerators or, mentors who are there. And there is this specific importance of building that relationship. from different geographies. We talked about some of the challenges around culture. So as a startup founder, how do you see the role of networking and really building those relationships and, really have that cultural sort of, gelling with that entity in a different specific region, and how does that play in the overall success, for a startup?
I think I will speak from the perspective of an entrepreneur and a businessman. I started off not as a technology person. I started off as a businessman, and it was in the course of attending a particular conference in 2016 that I got interested in the technology space, and I said to myself, I was going to veer into this space, and when I choose to do anything, I want to put in my all. And the first thing we did was to create a company called FinTech Inclusion Holding. So when we set up FinTech Inclusion Holding, initially, I only had an idea what I wanted to do, but how to go about it is what I didn't know. And secondly, I also had a passion. And what was the passion? The passion was to solve the cross-border payment challenge across Africa, especially as it affects intra-trade within the various regions. So the importance of networking came to play when I ran into a friend I met just in a conference like this, and we got talking and we exchanged cards, and he shared, his vision and the space. He was already in the fintech space, and I said to him, "This is what I would like to do," and he started talking to me about blockchain. He started talking to me about asset tokenization. He started talking to me, using various technology terms that were totally new to me. Initially, I was confused. Yes, I used to chair the board of a microfinance bank, but that was at the small level. But then I advanced that conversation, and I took a trip, and met him in Toronto, and eventually he decided to come in as a co-founder to set up the fintech company. And as I speak to you today, we've been able to design the entire ecosystem, ready to go to market next year. So at some point, we also realized that we were not able to do most of the stuff that were required, especially on the back end. So we partnered with a Canadian firm. So when we partnered with the Canadian firm, we asked them, what do you want? They said, okay, if we must work with you, we're going to take equity. So I asked them, what equity do you want? And they said to us, and we negotiated and we agreed. And we brought them in. And at the other end, we also needed a company that understands asset tokenization. And we found a partnership in a Swiss company. And the Swiss company said, okay, we're going to give you all the technical support, but we also want to have a pile of the cake. I said, okay, what do you want? And they said to me, this is what they wanted, and we agreed. Eventually, we were able to form that partnership, which is a combination of Nigeria, Swiss, Canadian, and a company out of Kenya. Now we got a platform ready, now ready to launch, but we didn't have the regulatory requirement to launch out of Nigeria. So we found a company in Kenya that got all the licenses, but they didn't have the technology. So we said, okay, here we are, we have the technology, we've got the exchange platform, we've got the asset tokenization platform, you bring your license, so what do you want? And we negotiated and we agreed. As I speak to you today, Q1 next year, that platform should go live. So you cannot overemphasize the importance of partnership and networking. And come to talk of networking at the global scale. I'm really excited being here in Gujarat, and I'm really thrilled seeing government take direct initiative and being intentional about what they want to do. And I was saying to a colleague this morning that if India continues in this sphere, I have no doubt that India will probably become the #1 country in the next 25 years if they remain with this space. Now, if you also look at Africa today, Africa comes with a lot of opportunity. When I mean opportunity, global opportunity. Africa is the last frontier. It is also projected that by 2050, the population of Africa will be between 2.5 to 2.6 billion people. What it simply means is that 25% of human beings that's going to live on this planet Earth will reside in Africa. Not only will they reside in Africa, Africa will also constitute the most youthful continent, ranging between 15 and 17 years. So you can see a whole large pool of workforce, coupled with abundant natural resources and talent already inbound in Africa. Now, how does that help our partnership, especially with countries like India and where you're going to? India comes with capacity building. India comes with their technology expertise. So a partnership, a combination of India and Africa will not only revolutionize the world, but will also help to deepen and provide needed solutions to the myriad of the world challenges, ranging from climate change to poverty to food security and the rest of them. So you cannot overemphasize the issue of partnership. Thank you.
So what Felix, great insights and great inputs from Felix. So he said that he cannot overemphasize the role of networking, the role of partnerships, in building relationships. Trust is something which is very pivotal. So you have to build that trust, specifically when you are operating across different continents. And also the rule of, networking and building relationships. So even before you think about receiving something, from someone else, think about giving something. What is it that you can offer? So once you start offering, something to your partner stakeholders, you would then in turn, receive that. And then Felix also talked about the great, show that the Gujarat government has really put up. And, we also saw as part of G20, the Honorable Prime Minister also had, Africa inducted into the G20, consortium. So there is a lot of opportunities which, government of Gujarat, India at an overall level can expect, from Nigeria. Nicole, moving on, along with this question on global partnerships and, networking, what is your perspective on this?
I think it's imperative, if I just think, even government to government, I think often there are a lot of bilateral agreements around trade, etc. And I think we really need to promote stronger partnerships around entrepreneurship, startups, the whole innovation space. If I just use as an example, one of the initiatives we ran with Tanzania is where we had hubs from each country setting out opportunities for startups to actually respond to challenges, similar challenges that were identified in each country around health and agriculture. So the startups were supported in the respective countries, but then there was an opportunity for knowledge exchange, visiting the other country, exploring the market there, and using that as an opportunity to kind of do knowledge tours, be handheld through the ecosystem in the respective country, how it works, etc. And I was so excited earlier to see the winners of your hackathon. I would love us to have an inter-country hackathon where, again, we identify similar challenges, because I think we're very similar. There's similar challenges, etc. And because we want to support and promote more entrepreneurship. And so if we run these inter-country hackathons and competitions, opportunities for knowledge exchange, I think we could do so much more about opening up our markets to these other entrepreneurs.
So very, very interesting inputs from Nicole in terms of the collaboration which AmLab in South Africa has with Tanzania and with the different startups, that are being supported. A great point in terms of having a hackathon across different regions, between different countries, partnership, and exchange of startups across different regions. Very, very interesting.
Absolutely.
So Deepak, question to you. If you can very briefly talk about some of the success stories, that you have seen at Gulf Business Incubator of startups, with global expansion.
I think we've been operating for last 9 months, and we've already seen some examples of success. So we incorporated a company from India which is into B2B SaaS. They have a solution for SME which helps them to assign the task to the team and then monitor it. So the business owner at the end of the day gets a report on his WhatsApp for all the tasks that have been done. Now that solution was tested in India. The good thing is it's got multiple languages that it can work in. So the founder took a leap of faith and then formed an entity with us. In the last 3 months, we've been able to make some amazing introductions. As I said, I work with the Dubai government. So Dubai SME, which is a part of Dubai Economic Department, is a body which has 160,000 SMEs under it. So we are able to make introduction of that scale to the startups. And every time the startup founder comes to Dubai, he's been able to get multiple contracts. In fact, you mentioned about funding. We've been able to raise a lot of funding for him and the pre-seed round and now in the following rounds as well. So that's one classic example of the success that we spoke about. I have another example that I want to quote here is a fintech company that we incorporated, and this fintech company is not small. They've been in the business for the last 4 years. They've got 300 strength of employees. They work with 40 banks in India, 32 insurance companies, and many NBFCs. Now, what they've done is they have digitized the entire journey of customer onboarding in the banks on the retail product side, so cards, loans, auto loans stuff. That company also took a leap of faith. They came incorporated as recent as September, and the best part is that we have already made introductions to the 5 banks, and they work with the largest direct sales agency in the country, which is now doing a white label solution for them. So there are examples of solutions that have worked in India or in other parts of the world, and we've been able to quickly kind of get them a placement in UAE market. I'll give one last example of an edtech company, which is a US-based edtech company. They are into preparing the youth, the university graduates in year 3 and 4 for employment. Because as we know, academics doesn't prepare you for employment. Now that company also has been able to achieve a lot of success because we, as a part of our endeavor to be a full ecosystem player, work with academia. So we have partnership with multiple universities. We make introductions, and that has resulted in a lot of door opening for them as well. So yes, it's been short term. We already have contributed a lot to many of those startups that have come and had faith in us in the GBI entity that we run over there.
Wonderful. So Takeru, following up on that specific question, any specific success stories or examples would you want to talk about, from a Japan perspective as part of 01 Booster, global expansion for startups? Any Indian startup that has come to Japan, from overall growth perspective, or any Japan specific startup that has moved elsewhere, if you would want to throw some light on that?
So let me take one example, which is an Indian startup coming to Japanese market. So maybe you guys know Paytm. Paytm, that's one of the, I think, as far as I know, it's a unicorn company in India. And they are funded by SoftBank, which is one of the biggest telecom provider in Japan. And nowadays, they are not that active than before. But they invest a lot, and they created unicorns a lot all across the world. So Paytm is one of the portfolio company of SoftBank, and now they brought their technology, their business into Japan, I think a couple of years ago, and now it becomes a kind of infrastructure for Japanese people for the payments services. But the brand name is different. Now it's called PayPay. So myself has a PayPay for every transaction, every payments. And now PayPay has more than 60% more market share in Japan. So, but I think most of Japanese are not aware it's originally came from India. But some investors and some startup wars people know a lot about this. So technology coming from India, but some marketing and the branding, everything are combined together with SoftBank powers. Now it's kind of a mixture of Japan and India, and they take our huge market. So I think that's a great example, because our for go-to-market strategy in any countries, of course, you can hire the amazing country manager who has a great expertise and who has a great network in any countries. But it's not easy to find that, and it costs a lot to operate it just by yourself. But if you bring your partners, like corporate partners or government partners, this kind of a tricky game, you can enjoy this kind of game. So I think this example, the lessons we can learn is to have a strong partnership model, and who knows much about the market and who has the resources, channels. I think that's going to be a kind of shortcut for the success in global expansion. So yeah, the Japanese startup, there are a couple of cases, but I don't have this kind of a great example, unfortunately, for global expansion. So let me just take Indian example for now. Thank you.
So Takeru talked about Paytm in Japan. We all know that SoftBank is one of the leading investors of Paytm, and that's how then through SoftBank and through Mr. Son, Paytm has also penetrated into the Japan market and really helping the global expansion there. So, Jen, a question to you. What is that one advice that you would want to give to the startups who are looking for global expansion?
Take your pride, take your capacity to learn, take your capacity to get things done, and connect in ecosystems.
I think a great point, made by Jen. He's talking about learning. In today's competitive world, learning is the most unfair advantage that you can have over your competition. And when you are talking about learning, it is basically learning from the market, learning from your customers, continuously adapting your offerings to what the customers are really looking at and solving meaningful challenges. So that's really a great point, Jen.
Maybe just to add one little thing. If you have got too many answers, you're on the wrong track. You have to have the right questions. So don't answer, ask questions.
So I think again a great point. So Einstein once said that if you have 1 hour worth of time, I would want to spend 55 minutes in terms of understanding the problem. And then once I understand the problem, coming out with a solution is a 5-minute job for me. So, and how do you understand the problem? You understand the problem by, asking questions, asking meaningful questions to your customers, understanding, what they are really looking at, and then solving it for them. Another great point which Jen talked about was execution, which we typically, don't have in our mind. We typically think that ideas are everything. Ideas are 1%. Execution is what really matters. And Sam Altman, really in a recent video, in OpenAI, he talked about execution, and compounding execution. That is something that really works for the startup. Pat, this question for you as well. What is that one advice you would want to give to the startups?
First of all, I love your point. Love it. And the point I would make is, it would be 5 words. It's know how to sell authentically. Every culture you go to has a different way of liking being sold to, right? And I think any culture I go to, I do a lot of research, right? On do people want to be sold up immediately, or do people want to develop a relationship for a few months and years before I ever sell anything? Do people want the problem first, or do people want the solution first? And this goes for both selling revenue, but also too, I think, for selling capital. So I think my best advice to startups and those helping them is let's make sure that we all understand what it means to sell authentically really well in any place that we go to.
Deepak, I would like to add, so great points from my fellow panelists here, but one important point, and it's not only for the startups who want to go out of India. I think the most important aspect that they need to also focus on the corporate governance, because in the last few years, the Indian startup ecosystem has grown and the world is looking at us, but we also need to focus on corporate governance aspect, because that's been one of the, I would say, weak link for us in many, many cases, and we are seeing the repercussions of that. So that's one. Second is keep a eye on your cost. You don't have to expand and spread yourself very thin. Take one country or one city at a time. That's the thing. And last line that I'll quote from Yuri Livan, the famous Israeli founder. He said, don't fall in love with your solution. Always focus on the problem, because many of founders have started feeling that their solution is the perfect solution for the world, but then they miss out on the problem. So if you keep focusing on the problems, your own solution will get improvised and better. So these 3 points in addition to what my fellow panelists said here already.
So great point, that Deepak essentially talked about, we have to fall in love with the problem, not with the solution. That is typically called an innovator's bias. So we typically, have fall in love with the solution that we have. Our specific business, we nurture it like a child. But what we have to nurture really is not the solution, but the problem. So if we fall in love with the problem, then success is really, what we can look for. Great point, Deepak. Nikoli, from your perspective, now that you have seen India, this is your first visit. This is also your first visit to Gujarat. How do you see the India-South Africa bridge, can be created, and what are some of the things that we could do, with M Labs and with South Africa?
Yes, I was very excited to see just how much of a vision, firstly, there is from government to support innovation and entrepreneurship. I'm very excited to see the initiatives that are going into supporting women innovators and women-owned startups and investment in those. And so I really do think that there's opportunities for us to conceptualize initiatives where those initiatives are already happening in the respective countries. There's hackathons, there's startup events, there's VC networks, etc. And I really believe that all there is now is for us to actually just connect the dots, conceptualize some constructive, tangible opportunities for collaboration, and just to start. Like we advise many entrepreneurs, it's just start, and so I'd be very excited to continue some of the conversations and to work with you to actually start some of those initiatives.
So very interesting points, made by Nikoli in terms of, praising government of Gujarat, the overall initiative, which is there to nurture the startup ecosystem. And Honorable Prime Minister has this vision, of Viksit Bharat. And when we look at, moving towards this path by 2047, startups, innovation has a large, role to play in this. So we have to, really promote this. So thank you so much for that. Also about women-led, startups, women-led entrepreneurs. We also saw, as part of the previous discussions, there were various funds which were there, which were promoting startups. So we will continue doing that. And, connecting the dots. Steve Jobs, in his famous speech at Harvard, talked about connecting the dots. And, as we speak, we all are here, destined to be here, to be part of this specific event. And hopefully, few years from now, we would have a lot of good collaborations, with UAE, with South Africa, US, Japan, Germany, Africa, Nigeria, and all of us. When we look at the future, hopefully I think some of these dots will connect, and we would be, building and nurturing the startup ecosystem across these different geographies, really promoting entrepreneurship and innovation. Entrepreneurship is really a solution to a lot of problems, that we face on planet Earth. And, we all have a significant role, to play as part of this. Concluding, I would like to again thank, all the panelists here for traveling from different continents, to be here for this panel discussion. Thank you again, for this, and also for your insights that you all, shared. And, thanks a lot to the Education Department, Government of Gujarat, for organizing such a fabulous event.
Deepak, as a closing remark, it's been a very exciting and inspiring last 2 days. Big thank you to the government of Gujarat for arranging this. I have a message, because this room is full of startup founders, VCs, accelerators. The whole world is looking to India today. I think we have created a niche. Let's capitalize on this. A lot of excitement. Our talent is being recognized finally, so let's make the most of it. Thank you for arranging this, Deepak and team. Thank you.
Thank you so much. May I request Shri Banchanidhi Pani sir, Commissioner of Technical Education, Government of Gujarat, to felicitate our panel of speakers with the memento. We have on stage our esteemed panel, Shri Deepak Sharma, Managing Partner and Co-Founder, India Accelerator, Mr. Takeru Kawashima, Executive Director, One Booster Japan, Ms. Nicole Kurbanelli, CEO MLab South Africa, Mr. Deepak Ahuja, CEO Gulf Business Incubator UAE, Mr. Patrick Reilly, CEO Moro USA, Mr. Achibre Felix, DFC Holding, and Mr. Jan Kunne, Manager EU and India Pacific Enterprise Development Group from StarTech event. May we request Commissioner Sir and all our panelists to come together for a group photo. Sir, please join us for a group photo with all the panelists. Thank you very much. After a day full of deeply insightful deliberations and inspiring talks, may I now request Shri Mukesh Kumar, Principal Secretary, Higher and Technical Education, Government of Gujarat, for the closing remarks and the valedictory. Thank you.
Yeah, it's time to close. We had a pretty long day since early this morning. We started our day quite early at 9:30 in the morning with inauguration program, which was quite power-packed. Some of the first thing that Startup Conclave witnessed was this event has a number of events that led to this conclave. Some of the first time that we did was a hackathon was organized. And it was not only open to the student from Gujarat and college from Gujarat, but across the country. And there was a government problem being put forward to this college student, and we were able to give them the prize in this event as well. Again, for the first time, we were able to, on the government platform, got investors more than 146 crore funding to startups by venture capitalists on a government platform, which normally doesn't happen. Typically, we disburse our government grants and debt, etc., on such a platform. These are one of the unique things that has happened in this event. Yeah, we did design this conclave integrating all the element of startup ecosystem and all the stakeholders. The scale of the event that we presume has been not just in a seminar, but near to a conclave for more than 1,000 delegates participated. We had more than 21 speakers. 6 speakers, foreign speakers. We had Minister from Government of India participating last evening, Cabinet Minister, Minister of State participated in this morning, Honorable Chief Minister of Gujarat blessed the event. Inauguration was in the presence of Honorable Chief Minister. And then we have got Minister of State, Sri Rajiv Chandrasekhar. And we had a Secretary of DPIIT, Government of India, which is a key department for all the startups in the country. And the Chief Secretary of Government of Gujarat, Sri Rajkumar. We had a very a film on entire journey of startups in Gujarat, a very power-packed film. We had Secretary Government of India talking about G20 countries and pledging to invest more than $1 trillion in startups. He shared his views on national perspective on increasing the number of unicorns in India with a dedicated startup ecosystem. The Chief Secretary Government of Gujarat reaffirmed that Indian startup industry has a tremendous potential of growth. You hope that they will contribute to make India a Viksit Bharat. Honorable Minister of Education, Government of Gujarat, Sri Rikesh Patel, briefed about how Gujarat has emerged as startup hub in the country and securing #1 position in last successive 3 years. He's emphasized that when country and state is investing in talent, progress is bound to be out there, and we are on the right track. Honorable Minister, Government of India, Sri Rajesh Chandrasekhar discussed about the government various good initiatives to promote innovation ecosystem. India's growth story in India economy is driven by young minds, and the innovation idea is highly appreciated. He also mentioned about target of 20% of a digital economy contribution in the overall GDP. We had a prize distribution for hackathon awardees. Report of hackathon was unveiled. A coffee table book was also launched on about 74 startups in Gujarat, which has really been successful. In the keynote address, Honorable Chief Minister mentioned about the vision of Honorable Prime Minister, who has kept the faith in young talent of India for nation to become a developed nation. On focus on a sports skill in startup for developed journey of the state and the country. Here it is Gujarat, which government has focused on these themes. Government has continued to simplify the process and rule for investment and startup to flourish. And Government of Gujarat has provided 5 crore funding for SSIP 2.0 in 5 years' time. He showed Gujarat is marching ahead with fulfilling the dreams of Viksit Bharat. So we had very interesting and very encouraging inaugural session. Then we had almost about 250 startup in our expo area. Honorable Chief Minister, the dignitaries visited. They interacted with various startups. They also had a first-hand knowledge about what startup been doing. A lot of his interest was also invested in the startup from the defense sector. And the Ministry of Defense has been participating with almost about 20 startup related to defense sector. We had a thematic sessions after inauguration where we had India Startup Story, which was curated by Ministry of DPIIT, Government of India. This was basically focusing on what has been the India startup journey so far, for the policy and programs. And these key speakers, again, were from the ministry, from the SIDBI, the METI, an advisor to the government. And we also had a fintech unicorn, Mabel Chaco, talking about it. Then we had a session 3, Rising Stars Unicorn Club. It was anchored by Honorable Minister. And we had active participation from our unicorns during the discussion. What were some of the issues, especially on the global access to the market, global market access, and some of the problems faced by the startups. Again, we had lunch break and followed by session 4 on Investor Compass, where the discussion on investor overviews, what they are looking at in terms of startup, their business model, their growth potential, etc. Then again, we looked at last session of the evening, a global opportunity for startups. How are startups, what are the opportunities available globally, how partnerships, how the global accelerator can network with us in partnerships with us to make a startup reach the global. I think we had a pretty intense and long discussion. I'm sure all the participants would have a very exciting day. Our exhibition continues for till about 9th of December. I invite, and our various students from the various colleges would be coming tomorrow, day after, to meet and interact with startup. You're also inviting academia as well as industry from Gujarat, from various cities, to come and interact with the startup which are here. We already have a back-to-back NGMAX edition going on. I'm sure at the end of the expo, most of the startup will go back with quite hefty orders or some good partnerships and good mentorship, etc. Yeah, at the end, I would thank all distinguished speakers, all participants and delegates who have taken time out of their schedule to make this conclave a hugely success. This is a precursor to Vibrant Gujarat Summit, which is scheduled on January 9, 10th and 11th. I again thank all the members who have participated in the conclave and made it a huge success. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. With this, we conclude the Startup Conclave, requesting all the invited guests to proceed for high tea, and also a humble request to visit the Startup exhibition, which is just next door.